Show. I'm your host, Effie Pilarinu, and today I have the pleasure to connect to Australia, far
That's
away
right.
from Switzerland, with Kevin Shimoda. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you, Effie. And you said my last name. I don't know how to say your last name. Pilarino?
That's
How
pretty
was that?
good, pretty good, pretty good. So, what's the origin of your last name?
My last name is Czech Republic,
Okay.
but I'm American, and I grew and they immigrated about 150 years ago. My last name did, and so it adapted in America, and it's disconnected from the Czech Republic, and now it's more similar to Japanese. It's a big
Exactly.
bizarre
That's
story.
that's what I would have thought. And you're in Australia, and
That's right.
you have been instrumental in WeChat's development, as you were
Yeah,
the global head of marketing and partnerships. I can say whatever I like about you, right?
that's right. That's right. I was instrumental at WeChat, whether if you mean instrumental in its success or instrumental in its failures globally. So
Well,
either way,
let's
a lot of
see.
that was my fault.
Because we're going to put this in a time frame. You were there
Yep.
between 2016 and 2019, so we'll have the opportunity to talk about what happened when during your time at WeChat,
Perfect.
and a little bit, the history. And just for our listeners, to share some of your background, I understand that you were at Accenture, involved in partnerships, and
That's right.
the last couple of years you have been running the podcast called the Great Fireside Chat podcast.
That's right.
And now you have finally released and published your book, which is the
Here
main
it is. If
topic.
you have the
Yeah,
video, you can see it.
yeah, hold it up. It is
Yep.
really the first super app. And I guess the subtitle is Inside China's WeChat.
Yeah, that Inside China is the first super app inside China's WeChat and the new digital revolution. So now we're hearing a lot of buzzwords about the word super app, but this is about the first one, which is unequivocally WeChat, which is the super app that everyone's really talking about, but sometimes they don't realize.
Yeah, and I would suggest to our listeners to read one of Ron Shevlin's Forbes recent articles
Yeah, that was
on
this morning.
yeah, why in the US there won't be any super app. And I'm sure tell us really, how did WeChat start? What were the first services that they were offering?
Okay, so getting right into it. I love that, Effie. So you got my background, and I was actually at WeChat for 4 years. Actually just starting 1 year earlier in 2015, and before that I was at Boeing. That's my full background. So
Okay.
I got those three big brands, Boeing, Tencent, and Accenture, for my credibility. And now this book is the first thing I've done as a actual independent, not wearing the suit of some big company. Me stepping out of my bounds at like 33 later in life. Um, but okay, so WeChat, and I think it's kind of an interesting question of what are the first services. WeChat never intended to be a super app. There still is no word for super app in Chinese. The word super
Where did
app
it
is
come from, really? Europe
Yeah,
or
that's a great question. You know, uh, there's not really a clear answer. The term super app it existed before WeChat in a sense, but it was just kind of used liberally and didn't really mean anything. And then it really started to coalesce to mean one thing, and that is the things which WeChat has accomplished, which is a great product experience while having a very expansive ecosystem with lots and lots of content, products and services, and things that you can purchase and interact with on there. Um, where it actually came from in the West, when did they start going? WeChat is a super app, and super app is the only way to explain WeChat. probably around late 2016, 2017. The first time Connie Chan, who's now a partner at Andreessen Horowitz, is probably the person that wrote about WeChat in the the highest capacity, the best value writing on WeChat, best analysis outside of China. And she was covering it in early 2014, 2015. And she wrote an article in 2015 called One App to Rule Them All, kind of playing on Lord of the Rings. And she writes about WeChat as it has the chatting app and then the social media aspect of Moments, which is basically Facebook Wall in WeChat, and combining those two really seamlessly. Something that Facebook has tried to do with Messenger and Facebook Wall, but never really did successfully. So they finally split the two. So WeChat provides a seamless experience for those two, and then brings on businesses, and then allows businesses to transact on WeChat with WeChat Pay, with little kind of, they're called web apps or web browser purchases.
The micro apps.
Yeah. And so these web apps are kind of like what we see in the West, like Shopify. They're website e-commerce. But in China, because WeChat was so prolific, so popular, and so ubiquitous, companies and developers started, how would you say, optimizing those website purchasing experiences for WeChat. Then as that gets really optimized and really smooth, a year later, you get MiniPrograms. But first, it's like Shopify, like all these website e-commerce that you see, DTC, direct to consumer, that you're seeing a lot of big brands doing, all within, but a lot of it's happening on WeChat. So then they go, hey, all this is happening on WeChat, let's optimize for WeChat. Kind of like in the West when you can buy things on desktop and on mobile, but certain people know for certain categories, like, hey, 80% of our customers are mobile. Let's optimize for mobile, not for desktop.
So how does this differ from a marketplace like, Amazon Marketplace? Because it is different.
Yeah, well, I'd say WeChat in general, its platform strategy is to be much more open than what Amazon and Alibaba, eBay have done. What they do is they kind of give you a shop, they kind of give you a shop square in the marketplace of Amazon. And they say you can sell goods, and in these little square, you have your big square, which is your shop, and you have little square of the goods that you can sell, and you have a price, etc. What WeChat gives you is a lot more flexible, more similar to Apple OS operating system. Is like you have an app and you can kind of do anything. It could be a shop window, but it also could be much more. It could be a service. It could be a game. It could be less education lessons. And going back to Connie, like that Connie Chan thing, she wrote about it in 2016, and she said, this is an app that you can do everything in. And that was before MiniPrograms. And she gets really close to calling it a super app. She calls it like a mega app. It's like this big app. Yeah. And she gets really close. And then 6 months later, MiniPrograms come out. And once they come out, now you just have like an operating system within WeChat. And then it all just, everyone, now the only thing they can think of is calling it SuperApp.
But Kevin, MiniPrograms is something that was born not only as a concept, but also as a word within the WeChat world, right? It's not Westerners trying to wrap their head around, what WeChat is.
Yeah. I would say MiniPrograms, as we see it, and it's also called mini apps in the West, is a Chinese invention. It's a WeChat innovation. Similar things did exist. You have Java has this thing called applets, which are kind of like, Java is basically, it's trying to create something that's similar to the open World Wide Web, like terms that we talk about Web 1, Web 2, Web 3. When you're on Web 1, it's all open protocols. It's all like web browsers, etc. Then you're on Web 2, you're locked into Facebook. You can't leave. It's trying to create something in between the two, where you have something like a web browser, but it's then much more a native experience within WeChat, and then you can kind of do different things with it. There were similar things in the West. None of them really took off. And then WeChat made this thing MiniProgram, and I was the person that named it MiniProgram. We kind of had to name it that to avoid people thinking it's apps and it's another operating system, because that feels competitive. So we go with MiniPrograms because it really is something new, and we don't want it to be an app replacement. We want it to be a new concept of a super website that's WeChat optimized.
So it does. Is the culture and the feeling in China similar to the West or the developed world, where we are like, oh, not another app, to download? Was that something that you were also thinking about when the mini programs were marketed as such?
Good question. And I didn't come up with the idea of MiniProgram. This is very much the founder, and then but actually I had to think about marketing it, because at first it wasn't clear if this was going to be successful. And I think that's, for me, something I even kind of before I answer that question is I want to say that SuperApps is a journey, and you're getting to this end place where you can have something like a mini program ecosystem, which kind of means you can have developers and businesses create pretty much anything within your app platform. And the mini programs are so sophisticated, they're almost as powerful as apps, but you don't really have to download anything. They're all like half a megabyte, 1 megabyte. So it's like you have this perfect union of the lightness of a website with the flexibility and complexity of I guess you would say functionality of an app. But in the beginning, it's actually a big development ask for businesses. Are you really going to develop an entire app for WeChat? I mean, would companies really develop an entire app for Facebook? Maybe, maybe not. They'll do a Facebook page, but maybe they won't make a whole app. It's a big ask, because as a developer, you got iOS and Android. So for us, I guess why it's important to say that is you can only introduce something like mini programs when you already have a lot of momentum. At that point, when WeChat comes out, it's not 800, 900 million users. They're using it 2-3 times. They're using about 80 minutes a day, which is 2 or 3 times the average of people using Facebook. So the usage time is really high. But then I'm on the marketing team, and my job is to help businesses figure out what the heck a mini program is. Because BMW goes, BMW or Burberry, they go, well, we have an app, we have a website. What is this mini program? What is this thing? And it's kind of like when Steve Jobs releases iPad. He goes, you have iPhone, you have laptop, iPad is the new thing. I like to think that mini program was a little, and it's in between. I like to think mini program ended up being very successful, maybe even more successful than iPad in that relative example. But then, to go back to your question, kind of, what are SuperApps? Or sorry, what are these mini programs, and what are they useful for? It's really a lot of them were just clear examples of taking. You don't want to take everything an app does. Like if you're Nike, you want to sell a certain set of shoes, or in the beginning it was just certain examples.
I got you. Now, you mentioned developers, and you mentioned let's say the App Store for iOS users. How does this world compare? I guess you have developers for mini programs, right? And is WeChat, is that open to developers? Is there a developer community that WeChat is taking care of and providing tools and so on? And could you tell us a little bit about how it may differ with what is happening in iOS or our other developer platforms? And I'm asking, for me, that the real question is there a focus on this developer community? And at the end of the day, how much of the revenues are shared? Because, this is really, rent sharing, rent seeking, and so on. So maybe too many questions, but if you can share some thoughts.
I'm glad I started to write notes as you asked those questions so that I don't lose myself. I lost your last question. I think I lost it and didn't answer it
It's okay.
correctly. So this time I'm going to write notes. Um, so developer community. So there is about 1 million mini program developers. So the precursor to this mini program concept was business accounts. It's kind of like, actually, Facebook tried to kind of copy this on Messenger. They made a Facebook Messenger business account. Um, but then it's kind of more, I think it's more similar. So that was, I don't even know, those still exist, but they were kind of bizarre and not very successful. It's more similar to, on Facebook, you have a business page. So that's your business account. You can interact with the business. You can, I think the biggest thing is you like or follow the business that posts stuff. Um, with WeChat, they had official accounts in the beginning, and that was the main place where your business was. But there was, and you could attach websites to that, but you couldn't do. It was kind of limited what you could do. And then it was similar to that Facebook page. Then MiniPrograms came out, and they were more like this mini app, and you needed a lot more development. And the official account, the business page, you just applied for it. You just kind of set it up and it was there. With the mini programs, similar to the apps in iOS or Android, you need to submit them and they need to go through an approval process.
Okay.
And to submit them, you need to be a registered developer. And that was kind of different. The original platform was much more open internet. You just have a page and then you just link to things. But then this developer is much more similar to iOS and Android. And so it was about, God, it was like 1 year in. I think there was, I don't remember the exact numbers. I do know that WeChat reached 1 million registered developers. I think that was about 2 years in. And it reached around, gosh, it was a few million mini programs. I can't remember the exact number again. But you have a million. I know they reached a million developers at some point, which is massive. It's probably gets close to the developer numbers of iOS, which is incredible. China is a very big market for a consumer market. It's also a big developer market. So there's how WeChat and Tencent engages with the community. You have users is the big one. I'd say the big three are users, businesses, and developers. And developers and businesses obviously kind of come together sometimes. Sometimes they're one thing. Then the fourth one would be government. And as you're a big platform, you're thinking about, how do I enable all of these people coming onto my platform? How do I enable them to interact with each other? That's like developers developing things for the businesses. And then how do I enable the developers to create things on their own without a business? And that's where games come into play. So the revenue sharing. So originally, so there's pretty much, it's just, if a developer can make a mini program that's really interesting to users, they can put ads on it, which is really similar to iOS. You can put ads on, you can put ads on those apps, and we all know how annoying those are. You start using an ad or an app, and then ads come up. So that's something they can do, and they can do revenue sharing. I think it's about 50% revenue share. They can make games, and again, 50% revenue share, or they can have in-game purchases. And you can use WeChat Pay to buy things in the game, and that can be revenue sharing as well. And then there's obviously the big one more recently is the GMV, the gross merchandise value, basically e-commerce within mini programs. And that's the one that's really been increasing the last few years, and which has really kind of been taking a bite out of e-commerce. And that's the big direct to consumer trend, which is big in China and also big in the West with Shopify and other things. Companies trying to sell directly to users and kind of go around Amazon and eBay and these other platforms.
I understand. Now, WeChat, the way you've described it, and from all that I have read, is a little universe, metaverse in itself, right? We can start thinking of it like that. How do you think that the fact that Tencent is such a big player in the gaming industry has anything to do with the design and the successful, if you want, design and user experience of WeChat?
Mm. Yeah, interesting question. Yes. Simple answer is yes. Um, Tencent does very well at user experience. I think it does the best in China. They know users, they know how to give users and people a great experience. In the business world, we call that 2C, to consumer, to users. That's what they do well. WeChat, the founder of WeChat and the current CEO of WeChat, which is a group within Tencent. His name's Alan Zhang. And when you're at WeChat, whenever you're going to go talk to Alan Zhang or be related to him in any way, you know that he's just going to ask pretty much one thing, and it's what's the value to the user? What's the value to the user? That's all he cares about. The head of Tencent, Pony Ma, is a similar mindset. What's the value to the user? Now, the reason why I bring that up is Tencent does really well thinking about user experience, and that's gaming is also user experience, all of these things. But when it comes to business experience, that's when they lag behind Alibaba and some of those other platforms in China. Alibaba knows what businesses want. They know businesses' needs. They think about those needs and they weigh them in compared to a user's needs. And they kind of weigh them up and decide who's going to win. But Tencent, it's always user first. And businesses don't always like that.
Kevin, the other thing that I have noticed is that Tencent is a very aggressive international investor as a VC, if you want.
Yeah.
You know, I can't distinguish which ones are strategic or not. I mean, many of them look strategic, but they're very aggressive internationally in fintech, specifically in financial services and broadly speaking in financial services. Does that also, do you feel that culture, or is it something that, you know, being within China, within Tencent in China is not something that you think affects what, you know, is done there, and especially WeChat, which is very Chinese, very domestic for now?
Yeah. You're asking the right questions. So this is an interesting one. First off, you're totally right. Tencent's investments are aggressive and very successful. I don't know. There's one thing to know is that Tencent is really good at investments. And the reason why I say that is they bought, for example, Riot Games for $100 million. Oh, I think it was around 100 million. And then it was like 2 years later, the company's making $100 million revenue. And then a few years later, it's up 1 billion and then $2 billion revenue. And now the company's worth 20 billion. Who knows? Riot Games is massively successful. But so it's one is they're good at doing investments. They have a good investment arm. But two is that investments and gaming is a part of Tencent's overall strategy. And let me kind of try to explain that. Is that you asked me before, why is WeChat so successful? And is it owed to that gaming heritage and that in the UX heritage? And definitely. So Tencent's at its core, what Tencent does, and potentially this is the same as Facebook, is Tencent wants to be wherever humans interact. So it's funny you talking about WeChat as a metaverse. I've never really thought about WeChat as a metaverse. It's just more like this chatting app that is the entry to a lot of things. But Tencent wants to be wherever humans interact. And when the Tencent founders played games, digital games 15, 20 years ago, they go, whoa, these online interactions are incredibly complex. And this is a precursor to some type of metaverse dozens of years in the future. And so almost all of Tencent games are going to be online multiplayer games, which is how people interact in a more interesting way. So WeChat, a big part of its strategy, doesn't do too much advertisements, doesn't even do too much kind of taking a cut of their massive WeChat Pay, which processes some 20-30 trillion US dollars a year. Instead, it plugs in their games to WeChat, so that when you get on the game, you see all your friends are on there, and boom, you're all playing together, and you can pay in WeChat Pay. So
Oh,
it
wow.
makes their games successful, and it makes their investments successful in games.
This is very interesting, Kevin, because
Yeah.
I wrote an article recently, just when the news came out that Facebook is rebranding their Facebook Pay to Meta Pay, and the questions that I was asking myself and sharing in the blog was, okay, obviously this rebranding means that Facebook wants to take a big piece of the payment space in the metaverse, and
Right.
who is there. And if you look in the West, I mean, for now, it's mainly people pay with credit cards and their microtransactions and so on. But there are big game players that have, payments as a service. And I'm wondering here, and by the way, we don't have the integrations that you spoke about, because you're telling me that gamers in the Tencent game world can pay with WeChat. We don't
Right.
have that in the West.
Right.
So
So that's something
the,
yeah.
that is extremely important. Um, can gamers hold their tokens in
So
WeChat?
there's always limitations because
Limitation.
I read that Forbes article. I read the Forbes article earlier today about SuperApps, what happened in the West, and there are a lot of things that I kind of disagreed with, and a few of them are Google. They say that Google Play, Google App Store. There is some Android app stores in China, and well, basically, whenever you purchase a digital good, you always have to pay some 30% fee to one of the app stores. And every platform has some funny workarounds. So you're on Amazon on your phone and you want to buy a Kindle book, you're on your phone, it will say this book is unavailable. And then you go, that's weird. And this is in the West. And then you go, let me go on Amazon on my computer. And then it'll go, would you like to buy the book? You can buy it. And it's because when you're on your phone, whether on Android or iOS, if you could buy that Kindle, a digital product, then you're going to pay a 30% fee to the App Store. But Tencent has found some type of workaround. Sometimes you can spend WeChat Pay to buy some coins online or buy different things online. So they got some workarounds. You can be on another app. They have workarounds so you can buy digital goods with WeChat Pay. I'm pretty sure I'd have to double check what the current situation is, but you can pretty much use WeChat Pay and Alipay for almost anything in China.
And what about what we call NFTs, and in China they're called digital collectibles? Is WeChat and Tencent? I mean, I'm sure Tencent is involved, but is WeChat enabling those purchases and or not?
Definitely, pretty much, it's something like 80% of payments in China are mobile payments, and then 99% of payments or mobile payments are WeChat Pay, Alipay, with about 55-45 split, a little more on the Alipay side. So everything's WeChat Pay, Alipay. I don't know if there are any current cases for using WeChat Pay to buy NFTs. I'm sure that if you can buy an NFT in China or these digital collectibles, I'm sure WeChat Pay would be somewhere along the process. It would be like you would spend WeChat Pay to fund some crypto wallet, and then you would use that to buy an NFT. But Tencent's making a lot of investments in the digital collectibles space because, again, they do really want to be in the metaverse. They want to be where humans interact. That's where they think they make the most money.
So do they have an edge over Alibaba and Ant Group in terms of the prospects of the metaverse, whatever it's going to be?
Absolutely. The metaverse is humans interacting with each other. And then businesses are going to come in and try to put their ads in front of people's eyeballs in the metaverse. You see Ready Player One, he's like, I can cover 40% of their digital screen until they like have some problems. So Tencent is all about does user experience and human experience really well. They're all about where humans interact. The entire super app strategy for WeChat has been being an excellent place, excellent communication, excellent tool for humans to interact with one another, pay to one another, spend time with one another, and then introduce things like their games, like their investments overseas, introduce those to users on the Tencent ecosystem within WeChat, and then they will definitely succeed. So they kind of sometimes you don't see the way that WeChat or Tencent monetizes, because what they'll do is they'll invest in a company and then they'll optimize that company for WeChat and introduce that company to WeChat, give them a massive amount of traffic, and then that will help that investment succeed.
I got you.
And just to
Yeah.
Effie, just really quick, just to go back to your earlier question about the international investments,
Yeah.
it's WeChat and Tencent. They're very Chinese. They are very China focused. When you talk to Pony Ma and Alan Zhang, generally they'll tell you they know China, they know Chinese, they know the Chinese diaspora, but they don't really know international. So those international aggressive investments, commonly what Tencent does is they go, we see this product, it looks really good, it's successful in this country, we're going to buy you or invest in you, and then we're going to step back. You keep, like Riot Games, you in League of Legends, it's like you keep doing your thing in the United States, you keep operating your own way, we're buying you 100%, we own you, but we want you to keep running, we don't want to change anything you're doing, and then we're going to launch your product in China. So we'll just kind of be like your China partners, and that's how Tencent operates.
Yeah, I got you. Take the investment and offer it as a service within the mini programs of WeChat.
Exactly.
Is there something that because what you described is like flows from the outside into the super app. Is there something that goes the other way? Meaning, does WeChat offer something as a service to not China? I'm thinking more to Southeast Asian countries, giving their some type of infrastructure that is used in other countries, especially in Southeast Asia, or not really?
Not
Not
exactly
yet.
sure I know what you mean. Can you kind of give an example of what you mean?
Well, I mean, let's think of Thailand or
Yeah.
Malaysia or those countries, and WeChat has built this infrastructure for me as a small business to launch my mini program.
Yeah.
Will WeChat give that infrastructure to a Malaysian company to use it as a white labeled infrastructure to build their own platform? It might not be a
Yeah,
super
okay.
app.
Well, let me try to answer the question as best as I can, like think of. Well, everything WeChat is going to be on the WeChat platform. And the WeChat platform is pretty much all Chinese people. So if you're on, it's pretty much all Chinese users in China or the Chinese diaspora, and some people related to China and doing business with China. Um, and then WeChat has tried to make kind of this mini store, mini program format to make it easier. I kind of told you about MiniProgram. The barrier to entry for MiniProgram is pretty high. It's developing almost kind of a small app. And because that's so high, more recently, what they've tried to do is make templated mini programs, like a mini store, so that mom and pop could just open a simple store on there. Now, so these things are, you could kind of say that's like that mini store is kind of a white label store that then you can go and put your own branding on. And it appears like your own little shop. Like it appears like you've created your own mini program. And so they're trying to enable a lot of small business owners. Actually, it's also trying to pair it really well with the influencer economy, because there's so many influencers on TikTok, Show, and these other platforms. And they're trying to find ways to monetize their fame, and connecting it with a mini store to more easily purchase and sell goods and services on WeChat is one way to do it. And WeChat now has channels which competes with Douyin. It's a short video platform, still not as impressive as TikTok's sister Douyin, and Kuaishou, but it's gaining popularity, and they kind of trying to put more monetization and e-commerce onto it. But I think that ByteDance is doing a better job of picking up the e-commerce side of things, and catching up there, where WeChat's trying to catch up to the short video side of things and is slower in than catching up. I'm not sure if that answers your question about kind of
Yeah, I mean,
going how it works.
I understand that. I mean, for me, it's just, it seems that um, WeChat is not done. They continue to innovate, right? It's not just about, okay, if they have X number of users, be it retail, be it e-commerce, they're just trying to increase that number. They're also continuously innovating in terms of the integrations that you're talking about, and making it much easier for their users to do business, right?
Right. I think WeChat is always improving. It's pretty incredible. It's always kind of top of class when it comes to user experience. Once you use WeChat for a few months, you get used to it. Then you come back to something like Messenger, Facebook, you'll really start to feel the difference. WeChat kind of really goes for user experience, really tries to save users time, do things easily, efficiently, where things like Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, it's going, hey, look over here. Hey, look at this thing going on. And when you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, even LinkedIn, you're so quickly getting distracted by all of this noise. You can't go to any of these homepages without 10 stories popping up on your face.
Yeah.
There's nothing like that on WeChat. There's nothing yelling at you. You get on WeChat and you see your chats, and that's where you would be distracted. But this is direct messaging to people, and you would have to opt into the kind of Facebook wall and look at some of those, but it's still in an ordered fashion, top down, and not a big screen of a bunch of things like trying to yell at you and trying to get you to stick around. It's so to back to your question, is it done yet? It's improving, and it's still improving. It's always improving. It's figuring out what users like to do and then optimizing it. It's figuring out what are new trends like short videos and optimizing to that. It's still optimizing its mini program e-commerce platform, tying it in with influencers. It's all optimizing that. Where I see WeChat being done is WeChat is going to struggle to go global. It's such a good product. Elon Musk is like, we need something like that in the West. But when you sit down and you talk to people at Tencent WeChat, they go, I don't really know global. I don't really know how to do that. I don't really want, I don't really interested in that. ByteDance, those guys and girls are much more globally minded. And they were able to launch a product that was good in China and then went global because they have a global mindset. Unfortunately, WeChat Tencent doesn't have that. But that's a huge opportunity for someone within China or outside to copy what WeChat has done, or even what Alipay or Meituan has done. And actually, I think I've kind of heard of people hiring people from Alipay, Meituan, WeChat, and then making SuperApp inspired apps in the West.
Inspired apps, yeah. Yeah, but of course, it's a totally different situation. First of all, for the simple reason that you're not starting with a blank sheet of paper, right? And building,
Yeah,
you have all these different competing forces that are like bugs that are going to come and, compete with you whereas WeChat and Alibaba were in a very different market structure, also from a
true.
regulatory point of view, right? Um,
True.
I
It will
mean,
be different. The super apps made in the West will be different. But the point is that the West is the best products are going to be products which combine some of China inspirations with the West. And that's
yes.
what Shein is. That's what TikTok is. And actually, that's what some of the newest big things in the West are in crypto is they're taking Chinese product managers and they're getting them to help organize all of this crazy stuff in crypto, because there's so much stuff, organized in a way that's intelligent and smart that has been done before in China. And Shein is an example of that. When you use it, you go, there's so much information here, but it's so much better organized than things like Amazon and other things. And it becomes really quickly popular.
And maybe the opportunity for the West is that, you know, given that the digital asset world, the digital world, meaning digital assets and the metaverse, which can have the first killer apps or use cases in education, in workplace, and in health. Maybe that combination is where this type of super app starts and succeeds purely in the digital space, and then of course gets integrated with the physical space. You don't know where it will succeed, right? But that could be a potential place where these ideas can come together better than they
Effie, I think you got a startup idea right there. I think that's the solution. It's something that intelligently combines several industries in a way that creates synergies and new opportunities. It was really fun reading. I'm glad you mentioned the Forbes article this morning. I read through it really quickly. It's fun reading it because I don't even know. I think it's wrong in so many places, and I just don't even know where to start. The thing where it's like Westerners are happily using a lot of different apps.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's completely wrong, because when you start combining things, that's when new possibilities are created. You know, and that's okay, now these three things are in one place. Okay, whoa, now this business model becomes viable. And to try to give a quick example of this is when MiniPrograms were created and WeChat had MiniPrograms and QR codes and WeChat Pay all combined. Something that became a viable business model was bike share. And that's, you take your phone, you walk up to a bike, like a mobike, these stationless bikes, you scan the QR code, boom, you open the mini program, boom, that matches to your WeChat ID and then in your unique ID, and then boom, you hit pay with WeChat. And you can even automate saying, I'm automatically going to pay. So all you do is you scan a bike without downloading anything, without really paying anything, with paying like 20 cents, and you're now riding a bike. So that became really popular in China, and it was exploding, all this investment. That's Mobike and OFO, and that was this thing that happened 4 years ago. And then about a year later, I visit Seattle, and there are these bikes the same bikes everywhere, because they went global, and they're competing in China, OFO and Mobike, for money from investors. And then to show that each side wants to show they're more global, so they both go global, and they take the same business models globally. And globally, they have these QR codes, and it says download the app to pay and everything. And I talk to all my American friends in Seattle, and they go, we don't know what those are. We don't know what QR codes are. We don't know why we download one. We don't really understand how you would pay for a digital service that's sitting in the middle of nowhere. And why would you do all of that work for something as simple and as kind of minimal as a bicycle? And that model doesn't make sense outside of the business of the mini program in SuperApp world. So there's things like that. There's like karaoke boxes that you just pay, you scan the QR code and you pay 1 renminbi to like kind of go in there for 10 minutes and sing a song. There are just all these interesting, strange little things offline and online that become possible when you start combining all these things into one place, which is why I really disagree with the idea that Americans are happy having 20 banks, having 20 apps to do each thing.
Yeah. And I'm sure, you know, that even if somebody's asking, they say, yeah, I'm happy because I'm served, but then some Steve Jobs comes and, you know, right? How would I know?
Thank you.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. And in any case, look, I mean, for me, the technology is there, and the technology is a wallet. And when I say a wallet, I'm talking a blockchain-inspired and powered wallet that can hold everything, not only my cash, not only my IDs, not only, you know, my invoices and my history, my everything, right? And that
Yes.
is where we could get that type of uh, um, uh, connectivity that you spoke about across different sectors. It could be first entertainment, education, and commerce. And you know, I don't know which ones will succeed, but it's through the wallet. So if we really get to construct a smart, intelligent, open wallet, not in the sense that is used right now in the again in the crypto sense, then
Right.
that is another thing, right? Because of course I'm not happy with the 50 apps and the 50 bank accounts and on, and we don't have that secure dashboard to manage our life, right?
Totally.
And
And like, I
maybe
don't want a bunch of different apps that do all these different things with really each with a non-ubiquitous kind of user experience. What's it's always an interesting thing as a platform when you're iOS. You go, I want to offer apps to do is whatever they want. But when you let them do whatever they want, then the user experience on each one is different, and that makes it more difficult for users. As you jump from one bank to another, it's got all these different things in different places. But yeah, I really agree with you. I think a super app that happens in the West is going to be blockchain, digital ledger technology, or Web3 based. A lot of WeChat and Tencent success happened in the one thing that article I think kind of gets right on this Forbes article is, and I actually can't remember if I don't think, actually, maybe he didn't mention this, but it's an unregulated environment is where Tencent happens. It's not so much regulation around monopolistic aspects. And that's what allows Tencent to have this huge ecosystem, an investment ecosystem, and then link it all to WeChat and have all these barriers up to not let Alibaba things be linked to WeChat.
yeah.
That is kind of their success in that unregulated environment. But also WeChat Pay, and another thing he has on there, it says that WeChat Pay, its success in WeChat Pay, Alipay, their success is owed to unbanked people of China, which I always hear about, which is really weird to me because in order to be on WeChat Pay or Alipay, you need to be banked. So you go and get banked maybe to get on WeChat Pay, but you have to get banked first. And but again, it was really easy for WeChat Pay and Alipay because the government just said, yeah, go ahead, full support. And then basically when WeChat Pay released, the day it was on, it was pretty much every bank you could submit your bank card and link it to WeChat Pay. It was of every province. Whereas in the US, it's like to get all 50 states, it takes a really long time.
Yeah, yeah.
So I guess I think it will be blockchain based because of all those regulations, because of the difficulty in every country. Blockchain makes a lot of that a lot more possible.
Yeah, but Kevin, we'll have to have another episode dedicated to regulation and talk about
Yeah,
how
definitely.
the business model has changed in China for Tencent and Alibaba because of the regulatory crackdown and even blockchain. You know, Europe, of course, is a much friendlier area. I would call it a broad jurisdiction area in terms
Right.
of blockchain regulation, but still there
Definitely.
regulators can impose restrictions that can hinder innovation. So in
Yeah.
any case, there's a lot of potential there, a lot of technologies converging, and a lot of human capital with brilliant ideas as to how to use these technologies and develop great user experiences and big platforms. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for being with
Thank
us.
you. Thanks for having me.
I will, of course, share the link to your book and your podcast, and
Wonderful.
look forward to speaking to you later this year and getting an update on your book, on what's going on in China and in the world where you look at all these developments through China, who is a leader in advanced technologies, clearly.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for having me, Effie.